as an entrepreneur, a lot of time is how do you be able to see the forest? How do you be able to sometimes see the trees? At some point, you see the leaves. Sometimes you see the roots, and sometimes you see the surroundings, right? And how do you connect that dots? I think that's very crucial. So this was early 2017 when we do the migration of Groupon Singapore to Fave. The tagline was Groupon is now Fave. And what we did back then was that we realized that Singapore, everyone used MRT, pretty much everyone, right? And everyone was advertising on the train, on the stations. So we decided to say, let's find where don't have advertisement, but everyone can see. A good test whether for that or even partnership is, would you do the deal again? 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, look back, will you do that? Will you take the money from this investor? Do you think the investor value add to you?
Right.
Do you think that you're going to bring the return for the investor? A lot of times as a founder, we think of what I'm going to get from others. But you flip the other way. Am I contributing back as well?
I am curious to dig a little bit deeper into your superpowers, and you specifically talk about kind of really going through the nitty-gritty of ensuring that the acquisitions of subsidiaries of Groupon in Malaysia were done and completed, and then later on when you sold to Pine Labs that deal went through. What are some of the lessons that you've taken from handling not one but several of these even within the life of Fave?
Yeah. So I think at Fave, we did 9 acquisitions, big or small. 3 of them were the Groupon subsidiary in Malaysia, Singapore, and Asia. A couple of table orderings platforms. When we were doing KFit, we acquired a few people kind of thing, 1, 2, 3 people, but a few micro acquisition. Or maybe even some of them may not be fully, I won't call it fully acquisition. We basically hire an entrepreneur who then came in and joined us, become entrepreneur in resident intrapreneur and build it up from there, right? Because they had 1, 2 people building up and there's a group. So a lot of it is thinking of it from in mind. So let's say example, I think that when we bought Groupon Singapore. So I still remember as we acquired it, I set a goal of 60 days. We want to move fully into our own platform. And we decide that as we go on that deal, okay, all the Groupon position, we will not want to buy the Groupon brand name, but they trademarks and all this kind of thing. We also don't want to buy the technology. We want to build own technology, everything. So that because ours in within the system, and because they're multi countries, for us we will never have flexibility. So we said, okay, we'll try to bullet those tools, and then let's go on it. So I still remember we set a 60-day deadline. Do I know exactly how to do 60 days? Actually, I don't know. But we say, okay, 60 days. Then everyone that says need to be done in 60 days. First convince ourselves, then convince our team, and then that's all. And then build a plan to it. I think everything with an end in mind, then leverage everyone to then think, this is the constraint, this is the limit. Let's say a lot of times when we do things, there'll be limited resources. There's almost no infinite resources. But with limited resources, a lot of time it enables us to think creatively, think outside the box, and do different things, right? Let's say, and sometimes even when I was advising, because I do angel invest a bunch of startups as well, advising founders, right? There was one founder recently that I was talking to. They have been doing on their platform for a few months, but they just keep on fixing bugs in their platform. And after a few months, it's just like the bugs get more and more and more. So I still remember I was just throwing a thought and say, okay, now assume that you have spent the, let's say half year on building the platform, maybe slightly longer for this as a founder. What if today you have now built the 2.0 version of this company? Assume that you have not written a line of code in this company. If now you have an empty whiteboard with your 6 month, 1 year experience on this, how will you design it? How you build this? Versus trying to fix that. Because a lot of time we put plaster, right? We stick it, then we add another plaster, we tweak it, change that.
Bandage kind of solutions.
Bandage everything. Yeah, but sometimes you zoom out, you might actually solve the problem much better, right? Especially if you already spent a few months trying to fix it and it go nowhere, it get worse. A lot of times, you may as well think of it. So sometimes I think it's the pulling a plug. And I think as an entrepreneur, a lot of time is how do you be able to see the forest? How do you be able to sometimes see the trees? At some point you see the leaves, sometimes you see the roots, and sometimes you see the surroundings, right? And how do you connect that dots? I think that's very crucial. At what point you need to be able to see what picture? At what point you can to different people, right? If you talk to government, they're like, we're not going to answer you on leaves. You're going to talk about the forest. But when you talk to the person that clearing the weeds, you need to talk about lead level or the which level, right? And
Mm.
not at a big picture. So I think a lot is contextualize. How do you zoom out, zoom in, and in today's world, multitasking and everything, how do you be able to relate, connect? And I think in the end is how do you make everyone understand and see it? How do you
Mm.
turn it into super easy understanding of
Right.
what you need people to understand? And I think
Mm.
that is a superpower there, right? That you not sort of need to put. And I think that the data is crucial. I always believe that without data, it's just an opinion. So that's one of the theme that we built at Fave where getting around the thing of it without data is just an opinion. So how do you make all the decisions based on data? And at the same time, not over analyzing. So what kind of hypothesis you have to set? How do you spot trend, spot gap, and be able to zoom in and solve that, right? I think those are crucial piece, but doesn't mean that's the only piece that you need to look at or do. But I think those are some of the areas that you think through.
And you leverage all these kind of like this kind of toolbox, so to speak, or when thinking about what specific companies to acquire and how to prioritize post acquisition integration and all of these things. Speaking of which, like any particular learnings from post acquisition, because I think there's a lot of talk sometimes about how do you exactly like integrate an acquired company into kind of like
Yeah.
the core business and all that.
Yeah. So I think a few parts. I think first part is people and culture.
Mm. Any particular learnings from post acquisition? Because I think there's a lot of talk sometimes about how do you exactly like integrate an acquired company into kind of like
Yeah.
the core business and all that.
Yeah. So I think a few parts. I think first part is people and culture.
Mm.
Do people from both the old and new believe that they are part of this new thing?
Mm.
So I would say from the day one, the first few days, especially, in the end, it's not about doing more things. It's about making everyone feel that this is the new home. This is the reset. What is going to be the same? What is going to change? How is going to change? How do you assure the right people? So that when we did the acquisition as well, so far when we did all the group acquisition, by day 2 or day 3, we actually tell people whether you are part of the team or not part of the team.
Mm.
Actually, I think pretty much all of them is by day 2, maybe one of them by day 3. But
Right.
so that there's no ambiguity.
Mm.
People know I'm secure here. Now let's not worry about anything else. Let's fix forward. Or I need to be not here and let's plan out a way and make sure that.
Mm.
And I think a lot of time when you do tough decisions, is do unto others what you wish others do unto you.
Mm.
And in those tough decisions, divide into two parts. The what decision of what to do, it needs to be answered by logical. And then how you do need to be answered through empathy, right? So let's say what decision to take. Maybe because of certain acquisition, we might need to do right sizing or downsizing
Mm.
or layoff. But how you do that? Imagine that you are the one going to be let go. How you wish to be let go. Right? How are you going to communicate? And people will see through that. Are you
Mm.
genuine, not genuine? Are you doing it for the sake of certain thing or whatnot, right? And I
Mm.
think in the end is that people understand, people can see through, right? So I think it's being in that consistent mode and how do you go through. So I think the people part is number one. Once you do people part, then I think you look at it and say, what's a must have? What's a bottleneck? The Gantt chart coming in, right?
Mm.
Before something else need to happen.
Right.
What are the things that, what are the 2, 3, 4 critical points that you need to make sure that those are in place so that the rest, let's say example, the system to onboard the client or customers into the play need to be ready so they can start onboarding or else it can't happen, right?
Mm.
No matter how you plan it, it can't do it. So certain things need to be much more prioritized. Certain things can be slightly later. So you need to plan through. And let's say example, you want to now migrate, back then we migrate like 10,000 merchants and all those kind of things, right? Who do you migrate first? What do we do? So a lot of times using data to plan out and say who you need to do it so. But my guidance is first set small segment. That's on a small segment, but first small segment is maybe middle level customer, not the highest value customer, but not your lowest value. That's
Mm.
a small segment on that. That's
Right.
it through. If it works, work works towards the main customer. It's 80-20. Your top 20% customer value is 80% value. So when we do the migration, we just study two things. Number of customer migrated to the new platform. But the more important one that you track is percentage of revenue
Right.
or GMV, gross merchandise values, it has been migrated. So that will become our controlling point, right? Because at some point I need to, on the day of migration, I need to kill the old platform and fast through. And the goal for us a lot is how do you move 60, 70, 80% before that day? Of course, you can get 90%, 100%, that's great. But a lot of it never be, right? Because people need to do the action, download a new app
Right.
and everything. Maybe sometimes you move 25% customers on the, by then, this 25% customers is actually 65%, 70% of it. And how do you convince people? If you, let's say back then, we know that you have been buying massage, you have been doing what area. So when we convince you to migrate, we need to put a messaging and offer that I exactly speaking to you. If I know that you love this buffets, to convince you to go over, let me put you a buffet offer that you have a high chance that you're going to say, okay,
Right.
I've been buying buffet now. If I don't do this, I might lose the in future buffet. I'm going to go there, right? So it's not random. Which customer to target and how to target as well, because there's cost to target, right? What do you do? Do you email them? Do you message them? Do you call them? What kind of thing to do? How much it costs? And even you do above the line. How do you think outside the box? So this was early 2017 when we do the migration of Groupon Singapore to Fave. The tagline was Groupon is now Fave. And what we did back then was that we realized that Singapore, everyone used MRT, pretty much everyone, right? And everyone was advertising on the train, on the stations. So we decided to say, let's find where don't have advertisement, but everyone can see. So at that time, Singapore, the train announcement, the place that show the timer, the train is reaching in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's still an analog. It's the ticker of the word. They like the stock market word that they move over. The train is reaching in 2 minutes, or approaching or whatever, right? So what we did was we actually, because that part has no advertisement at that. So we actually managed to strike out a very good offer with them because they got no pricing for that part. The train is approaching in 2 minutes. Groupon is now fake. So we basically had the word Groupon is now fake into all train station, all train arrival in the whole island.
Right.
Right. And because they have no price tag for that space, because no one has rented it. And of course, now they are doing a digital screen. Whereas now you can put a proper advertisement. So now it's not cheap, that one already anymore, right? Because they now have the actual ads where it's a graphic. Because those days when we do it, still wordings only. So we just add the wording, no announcement, because announcement is too expensive, because they already do announcement things. So we were just like that. Pretty much everyone knows because 90+% Singaporean take trains. And they will look at it when the train is approaching. After approaching, it's like Groupon is now fake, like this, right? And that was how we did a soft way. And the cost of that announcement is cheaper than the cost of one train. The country has so many trains. Of course, the train looks bright, colorful, beautiful, right? You paint it. It looks very beautiful. But there's only one train. How many people will go in a train because they got so many trains? Not everyone will see it. This is analog wording that is boring, but it hits the point. Everyone sees it. Of course, you need to understand as an objective on that, right? You want to build a branding, maybe it's slightly different and whatnot, but a lot is that. And then back then when we do for Malaysia, we wanted to compare, and because Malaysia, we have been home ground, so we know a lot of founders. So we actually created a competition among all the startups in the country and said that we'll give you a promo code, the Lorry Fave, right? Hassan Fave or whatever, right? Each of them has a promo code that have this, and we actually coordinated. On the day of our migration, we have about 30+40 startups all blast to their database to say our friends at Fave has just got our group, and to download it, go on this. And what we do is we run a competition to declare which startup has the best way to convert customers. And the winner we will email the 2-3 million database that we from Groupon that they are the best in this country for conversion. So the winner will give them a dedicated email. The next 4 or something, we give them a shared email. So imagine that you are someone that customer of 5, 10, 20 platforms. Suddenly on that day, you get 4 emails, 5 emails, 10 emails that all tell you Groupon is now fake. Right? That's basically hit it to there, right? And then, hey, account I suddenly got spammed by all these people that all say
Right.
that. And I think a lot of it is thinking beyond outside the box to do it and do it. And of course, need to be fair to everyone as well. So basically, those platforms that did it well, they get recognized because they can then say, "Hey, we are the best conversion of people in this country,"
Right.
and they get their words reach out to even more people, right? And the cost for them is just one email, one message out to their base.
Right.
But when you use correctly, it's very powerful.
What that whole experience really reminds me of is that even as you acquire these subsidiaries or these companies, when thinking about kind of announcing this integration or this migration, you really thought of it as sort of a almost like a go-to-market strategy or something like starting from square one and really, not taking for granted what you already have, but really, thinking outside of the box, as you mentioned, and leveraging that as well. I also like what you mentioned about kind of like the golden rule of, don't do unto others what you wouldn't want done to you, because that sort of fits into your own story of, having done all these acquisitions and then eventually being acquired as well. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, the other side of the M&A, kind of story, right? Of how it's like to be acquired and what you learned from that experience.
So I think the acquisitions, I would say our acquisition is more coincidental
Mm,
because it was during COVID period,
mm,
right? So during COVID period, our business were disrupted quite a bit, right? Because our customers use us to go dine in restaurants, massage, facial, visit tourist attractions, holidays, some servicing, car servicing or whatever.
right.
A lot of this business were disrupted during COVID,
Mm,
where we suddenly can't go. So our business were get affected quite a bit. And I think at that time we had a decision point. Do we double down or do we sell off? Right. And I think that's where the decision, and I think through some connect and whatnot, Labs became the one that acquired us, right? So
mm,
I would say that do we sell at the prime? No, we didn't sell at our prime. But if I were today to go back to that point again, would I make that same decision? I would say
mm,
the answer is yes. Right? Because a lot of time, hindsight is 2020. Of course, I didn't go in and say, oh, this will be right. But at that time, we don't know how long COVID will last.
right.
We don't know what will rebound, what will not. And a lot of times is we will never have a perfect of everything. So judging on across the what, so I think that was sort of where it is. And I think a lot of it is understanding, great win-win-win synergy, whether partnership, acquisition, everything, and go out there. So let's say you went for startup founders. When you go out of fundraising, people use fundraising because more of you will relate to it than
Right.
acquisition. Right? But let's say you take fundraising. A lot of founders will say, I want at a very great high valuations, right? From investors, from VCs, everything. But the way I will always ask a founder to think about is, think of you, your family, or your best friend want to invest in your company. How much should they give you for them to own 1% that you think is fair for you and fair for them?
Mm,
Right? Not thinking from a VC standpoint, because the one you feel not so connected, right? At that
right.
point, right? So now think of it, your best friend. Today, your best friend going to own 1% of your startup. Should your best friend pay you 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million? If they pay you 1,000, that means you are valuing for 1%, that means you're valuing your company at 100,000.
Yeah.
If your friend pay you 10,000, then you're valuing at a million. If your friend is going to pay you 100,000, you're valuing your startup at 10 million. Right? If you're paying you a million, then you're valuing at startup at 100 million. There's no right or wrong because every scenario is different. But you want to go out there and say that, hey, it is fair both ways. Your friend think it's worthwhile, and you think your effort have built so far is worthwhile.
Mm,
And yes, we have multiple metrics, we have multiple benchmark, everything. But in the end, it's supply demand. And in the end, is does it make sense for each of you?
mm,
And a good test whether for that or even partnership is, would you do the deal again? 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, look back, will you do that? Will you take the money from this investor? Do you think the investor value add to you?
right.
Do you think that you're going to bring the return for the investor?
Mm,
A lot of time as a founder, we think of, what I'm going to get from others. But you
right.
flip the other way. Am I contributing back as well?
Mm,
And I think there's a lot of time in there, right? A lot of time we were as a founder or a human being, a lot of time we're like, let me get benefit from others. But how often we ask ourselves and say, how much are we contributing and giving back?
Mm.
How are we making a difference in others?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about really thinking in terms of foresight. Like we always like to think in terms of like hindsight, 2020, all of that. But I think having that ability to also see whether you can deliver or really contribute or give value down the line is something that's important as well. I'm curious to know, since you mentioned in previous conversations we had that you don't just advise startups, you also advise corporates as well and other types of organizations and businesses. What do you tell them about kind of like opportunities to partner with or even acquire startups? Like what's your message to those types of organizations like corporates and like
I do my advisory through 1% advisory and coaching.
Mm.
So I think and I technically don't even have a website. I'm just doing it via LinkedIn with my referrals.
right.
And a lot of times I don't come from messaging. What I
Mm.
do is understand the other party, the clients, right?